I had kind of a weird, serendipitous trail into the renewable energy field. I guess I got interested in it when I was working in New York. I have an art degree, working as a studio artist in New York, and I got really interested in doing kinetic sculptures that would be outside, and there wasn't any access to power, so I started making some solar powered sculptures and started getting more and more interested in the technology behind solar. And then when we moved back to Iowa and moved down to our farm, I started getting really interested in the idea of self-sustainability and being off the grid and all this sort of thing. So I started getting engaged in activities in the Iowa Renewable Energy Association, and taken some classes from the Midwest Renewable Energy Association, and this was in the mid to late 90s, and it just kind of ballooned from there. In terms of renewable energy, the actual hands-on experience of installing stuff you can do tons of classroom time, but until you get out there and actually start putting systems together, none of it is really a reality. So I hooked up with Dennis Potratz, who has a company in Decorah called Go Solar, and he was the first full-time solar installer in the state of Iowa, and I started working for him, and we'd go on the road a lot, and we just spent a lot of time installing systems, and really that's where I learned the most, was just learning from somebody else who had a lot of experience in the field. And then I kind of went back and backfilled with some of the theory, taking classes up in Wisconsin from the Midwest Renewable Energy Association. So I got the hands-on experience, and then I learned the theory after, which is kind of the opposite of the way most people do it. In terms of my education, I think after I got out, I had a lot more questions about things than when I was in school. So I think there's something to be said for taking the time to get some experience, and then going out and knowing what you want to learn. When I was working with Dennis at Go Solar, for a while we were putting in the biggest arrays in the state. We put one in, and this was the biggest one in the state, and then we put in another one that was a little bigger than that, and now there are arrays that are 10 times what we were putting in at that time. But we were there at the beginning, and we were getting out there and trying to show people the way. So I'm proud to have been there at that time in the business. I'm proud to have worked on getting, tax benefits for solar owners at the state level in my lobbying work. And actually now I feel really good about working with students. I feel like that's something I really want to do is sort of help the next generation figure out their way. So I don't have one thing that I think I contributed. Hopefully I contributed a few little things that add up to something. Yeah, the best piece of advice I can give people is, if you really want to get involved in the renewable energy field, is I would say at this point in the game, you kind of have to pick what sector of the industry you want to get into. Do you want to get into sales and marketing? Do you want to get into installing? Do you want to get into development? And then go, if you want to develop big solar projects, get the business background. If you want to actually install systems at this point, the way I did it in those days, there wasn't a lot of certification requirements. It was kind of the Wild West. So now I'd say if somebody really wanted to get into installing, I'd say the first thing to do is go get a job with an electrical contractor, get your apprentice's license, work through your journeyman's license, get your master's license, and be taking the renewable energy stuff along the way, but get out there and get licensed as an electrician, because that's where it's going to be at in the future. You're going to have hold a master's license to really do installations. I am sort of old-time hardcore anarchist, really didn't believe that government could affect positive change, but over time, working with the Iowa Renewable Energy Association, I just sort of got sucked into doing policy work. It's like somebody has to do this, you know. So I put on a suit and tie, which I hadn't had on since I was probably in junior high school, and started going to the state capitol building. And then I started working with the Union of Concerned Scientists and started going to DC. And I was sort of a reluctant lobbyist. And I have to say, I do have a couple of personal successes in terms of lobbying. What the long-term implications of those are, probably pretty modest, um, but I think you got to work it from both sides. I think you have to work as part of a community, work at a grassroots level, just kind of don't wait for anyone to give you permission to do what you want to do. And it's like you look at something like gay marriage, or you look at marijuana laws, and it's like people just did what they had to do until they decided that they would make it legal. Those people did not go and necessarily lobby for this stuff. They just made it part of their lifestyle. So I think the biggest thing is to live what you believe in, and when you have the opportunity to speak truth to power, then you have to do it. Whether you want to or not. I don't expect everybody to put on a suit and tie and go to the Capitol building, but you can write editorials. You can start a blog. You can make documentaries. You can do zines. There are a million different ways to get the word out there and be heard without actually necessarily going and dealing directly in the belly of the beast.